don't recognize the law. They now finally do, because they were sued by a patient advocacy group in California. But that is the sort of thing you tend to be up against when you're lobbying on this issue. While there may be other industries like the alcohol industry, like the pharmaceutical industry, like the drug testing industry, that implicitly you could see why they would oppose this issue, you do not have them presenting themselves as a lobby organization in opposition of the sort of legislation we want passed, like you see law enforcement. I can tell you on numerous occasions in many states where we have had bills, particularly medical marijuana bills, that had very strong support within the legislature, voted out of several committees, and all that would turn on a dime when law enforcement decided to get involved. And the other thing I would tell you is that there is no concession when you're drafting this legislation or you're talking about amending legislation that would appease law enforcement. When they say they oppose medical marijuana because they're worried about the number of plants or the amount of marijuana someone could possess under the law, and we suggest lowering it, that's never good enough. They simply don't want the law. And you learn that over time. You have to learn, unfortunately, that's not really a group you can negotiate with because their jobs depend on prohibition, and we're trying to end prohibition.
Mm-hmm. But the credibility of their jobs...
Unfortunately, they do have some built-in credibility. I say unfortunate because they're often talking about issues that they don't understand. When law enforcement officers are playing doctors, when they think they understand what therapeutic agent would work best for a patient, or they think they know what therapeutic agent would work better than the one their doctor is recommending, then I think they are in it. They have entered a territory where they should not have credibility. When they're in a classroom explaining to children the alleged dangers of marijuana, I think they are there again out of their environment. They were not trained to be teachers. Why are they in a classroom educational setting? They were not trained to be doctors. Why are they making policy or determining policy when it comes to the health and well-being of patients? That when their doctors are making those decisions for them, or the patients are telling us that this is a substance that works for them. So yes, while they do have credibility, it's unfortunate because this is oftentimes an issue where law enforcement officers simply don't have the education, they don't have the know-how, and they really shouldn't be given the deference that they're given by many of these legislatures. There are also, I don't know if many people are aware of this, law enforcement agents or police, when they do testify, are allowed to come into the legislature in full uniform, brandishing firearms. Joe Citizen can't come to a legislative hearing brandishing a firearm, and the reason I say that is because there is a certain credibility about the uniform that goes with that, and legislatures do respond to that. It's very hard for politicians to vote in a way that opposes what law enforcement is telling them because they have that built-in credibility, they have the uniform, they have the gun.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, you can think about it and get kind of negative. It can seem kind of dark out there in terms of all of these opposition forces.
It can, but
where's their hope?
Right now we're in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And, according to the state law of California, patients can possess and use marijuana when they have a recommendation from their physician, and that law is 10 years old. It's never been challenged by the federal government, and as if your viewers would see if they were here, but as Patrick is finding out, medical marijuana is alive, well, and plentiful in San Francisco, and for that matter for the state of California. The recreational use of marijuana in California has been a fine-only offense going on 25 years now. So there is progress, there is change taking place, and it's taken place in many places, oftentimes places people might not expect. One of the things that I tell people that I think shocks them for the first time is that if we were to talk about the state that has the most lenient marijuana laws for an adult to possess and use marijuana, I bet 9 out of 10 people, even at this conference, maybe more of your viewers would get it wrong. The assumption many people think is either Oregon or California or Alaska. The answer is Ohio. In Ohio, a person under state law can possess up to 100 grams of marijuana, roughly 3 ounces, for any purpose, and that is a fine-only offense, punishable by $100. That's been the law since 1975. Personal cultivation is also included under that law. They're one of the only states where cultivation of marijuana for personal use also falls within the fine-only offense. This is Ohio. This is a conservative state. Yet, the legislature did have the good sense, and the electorate in that state was vocal about wanting this issue, and the legislature responded. That's been the law there now for more than 30 years, and it's been amended in recent years to become actually more lenient than it once was. Mississippi is another example of a state people might not think of at first, but in Mississippi a person can possess marijuana, an adult, for any purpose up to about 1 ounce, and it's a fine-only, non-arrestable offense. That is the law. So I don't want people to think that progress isn't possible, and I don't want people to think that progress is only possible in certain states like California or Oregon, sort of these states that are seen as the liberal sort of West. The truth is there are 12 states where a person can possess marijuana and is a fine-only offense, and those states include places like Nebraska, Oregon, Ohio, North Carolina, and there are another 11 states where the use of marijuana for medical purposes is legal. No arrest, no fine, and in places like California there are dispensaries that will distribute that to adults, and they are zoned and they are regulated by their counties and by their towns. This is major progress when it comes to this issue, and it's progress that has taken place without the help from Washington, and frankly, in many ways, I think that's empowering. As I said, Washington's going to be the last to react to this issue, not the first.
Well, let me ask you this: how is this all percolating out on the international level? I've heard that Canada's going conservative and trying to crack down on the marijuana party up there, and Amsterdam is having some pressure, and they closed down Christiana and Copenhagen, and what's going on there anyway?
Well,
Switzerland was way ahead or something.
It's funny. America has this very sort of do drugs, do time, one size fits all drug policy. Most of Western Europe, most of the world for that matter, does not share that belief, and the countries that do are not countries that we would otherwise want to emulate. I'm thinking of countries like Singapore and Myanmar. They have do drugs, do time policies there too, but they're not the sort of countries we should look up to. Most of Europe has what are known as sort of harm reduction-like policies, which means they recognize that drug use is something that a society basically has to live with, and they are more concerned about drug abuse than simply drug use. And when they discern that they have drug abuse, they deal with it like it was a public health issue as opposed to a criminal justice issue. Canada has been doing that for some time. As I said, most of Europe has been doing that to different degrees. Some countries are more liberal than others. Portugal in particular has made great strides toward this sort of harm reduction model. Spain and Italy, it's rarely talked about, but possession of drugs in those countries as a criminal offense is almost non-existent. The threshold one can possess before criminal charges are incurred is very high, like something like 1 kilogram. Thresholds that would not be, really would never be met by the average person, But it is true there has been a backlash in a couple places, Canada being one of them. There is a new government, Conservative Party in Canada, that did win this most recent election, and they did campaign on getting tougher on drugs, and it certainly seems as if they will follow through with that promise. It's unfortunate I don't think things will change in Canada that dramatically. Most law enforcement is left up to the provinces in Canada, and the provinces